And now I want to bring in NBC News legal analyst Misty Marris and retired NYPD Captain John Monaghan, an expert on police procedure. Captain, I want to get your perspective on these videos we've been playing over and over, specifically shot by shot. Now, I know all of this happens in maybe 2-3 seconds here, but I'm sure you've had quite some time to look at all these frames, just like everybody else seemingly in society. You can see those moments, the tires turn. You see the officer at the beginning in front of the vehicle make his way to the side of the vehicle. And then we know that there were 3 shots fired from the sounds of that video. What do you see?
Well, first thing is that cop doesn't know those tires are being turned. It's a slight turn, and he doesn't see that. You know, the courts have decided, and most departments have input a change to the deadly force rules, which is rare. The deadly force standard has been in place for decades. To tweak it is a big deal, and it was tweaked in 2012 to include the phrase professional judgment. For the average citizen to watch this video and then pass judgment isn't helpful. The courts have decided that the judgment is that of an experienced, trained officer. So, and this cop in particular, if you take his experience, he's been dragged before, as we know. He doesn't know that wheel's turned. In that split second, he's not looking down at the tire to say, oh, which way is she turning the wheel? And the first shot, I mean, the first shot goes directly through the windshield. The first video that we look at there, I said this last night, he's not even in the frame. He is directly in front of that truck. You know, listen, if you boil this down to the basic elements, you've got a pedestrian on foot and a vehicle operator commanding a 2,000-pound vehicle. That's what we're facing. He's not even in the frame until the very end. Listen, it was an aggressive, violent act, and the cop was in fear for his life. You know, the standard, I can tell you this, the standard throughout the industry is you don't shoot at a moving vehicle. That is the standard. There is an exception to that rule. There has to be in the real world with deadly force. And the exception is if you feel your life is in imminent danger, then you have to take whatever reasonable measures are available to you. That's what it looks like here happened.
And this is one of those things where, you know, we're all looking at it and we're all coming to conclusions based on where everyone's coming from. And yet, at the end of the day, the only real opinion at first that's going to matter is that of a potential prosecutor, if it gets there, right? So, Misty, jumping straight into the big question of jurisdiction and the federal supremacy clause. Are the locals' hands completely tied here with access to the evidence in this case? And is this going to be a federal case no matter what?
So, Gotti, they're not completely tied to ultimately bring a prosecution, but it would be fraught with a lot of challenges. And that's because of, as you said, the Supremacy Clause. And that says that federal officers, when they're acting in the course of their duties, cannot be prosecuted by state or at the state or local level in a criminal case. But that is what's called a qualified immunity, not blanket immunity. So the question is, were they acting in the course of their official duties? And the second part of that is, what was their action necessary and proper? Was it reasonable under the circumstances? So we get right back to that analysis John was just talking about, whether or not there's a legal justification. So it's super fact sensitive, and there's a lot of cases that ultimately federal court would be the right jurisdiction, but it's possible that a state court case could move forward.
And Captain, as a former law enforcement officer, we see the portrayals in Hollywood on what happens when the feds come in and then there's this jurisdiction fight. But what does it normally look like in the real world versus what we could be seeing here?
We have a firearms discharge review board in New York City. Now, if a state trooper was involved in a shooting in Manhattan, we would not put that case before our FDRB. The state police would scrutinize their own cop. That's just how it works. And what Misty said was very well stated. Legally, prosecution-wise, that's going to be a separate issue. But as far as policy and the scrutiny by the professionals of the department of that cop. Now, this guy's a Fed. The cop is a Fed. His people should do that scrutiny. They should conduct their own firearms discharge review and decide. And, you know, Misty makes a really good point also. Policy is one thing. The law is something else entirely. The law allows for broader actions then usually police policy is much more narrow. I can tell you, I had an incident like this myself. I shot a car. It was a long story, right over on the FDR Drive here in New York City. And the district attorney, we went down to the grand jury. I testified. We indicted the driver of that car on a first-degree charge. The police department wasn't too happy with me. There was no discipline, but there was retraining and there was some talking about it. So the law and police policy are two different things, and it really should be the department of the officer that scrutinizes the discharge as far as policy. Legally, as Misty said, it's going to get complicated.
Interesting. And Captain, one more question.
I think it should
wanted
be.
to ask.
Yeah.
We're also seeing, and we don't have video at all on what's happening in Portland right now, but we live in a day and age in which information flies so quickly. Yesterday, when this was happening in Minnesota, we were seeing those videos come out almost in real time. And now we are also seeing in Portland the federal authorities putting out some information that they say claims that the people that were involved may have been affiliated with Tren de Aragua, the Venezuelan gang. And there is a lot of information that is front-loaded on these investigations. I've been covering this kind of stuff a long time. And in the past, it's normally been, well, this is under investigation. We can't comment because this is under investigation. The investigation is only starting. Do you see, Captain, that changing in this day and age?
To an extent, because, you know, there's more information than what the department is going to let out. People have cameras. There are people in the vicinity that are going to communicate to the media facts and information that they have. You're not relying entirely on the investigators to keep you apprised. You're going to get more information than what they just have. So, I mean, that's one thing about today's day and age, for sure. The thing in Portland, obviously, it's very different. If now, as you say, this is a gang member, this is not a protester, it is very different. The scrutiny of a shot fired, there's no difference. Again, I say strip it down to the man is a pedestrian and you've got a vehicle operator. Let's just stick with those facts and look at the justification of the shooting. That doesn't change incident to incident. Politically, culturally, everything else, of course, it changes. This woman was a protester, and the other guy in Portland, if the reports are accurate, is a violent gang member. I don't understand how people can support that. A violent gang member resisting law enforcement, it just flies in the face of the rule of law in a civilized society. But of course, Minneapolis is different because the driver of the vehicle is a different kind of person. Sure, that makes a difference.
Yeah, we'll continue to wait for more details, and hopefully we'll get those within the hour. John Monaghan, Misty Marris, thank you so much. Appreciate your perspective.